Hello, everyone. Grace and peace to you. It's Wednesday of the 5th week of Easter, and I'm back again with another reflection on some of the spiritual disciplines or practices that I think may continue to be helpful as we navigate the COVID-19 crisis in our time. Last week's video, if you haven't seen it yet, was on the discipline of humility, the practice of recognizing that each one of us does not have all the answers, the practice of deferring to people with greater expertise or knowledge than ourselves and trying our best to glean from that knowledge as we seek to make good decisions. This week, the discipline that I want to talk about is somewhat related to humility, but it has a little bit of a different flavor to it. And that discipline is the discipline or the practice of empathy. Like humility, empathy is about trying to remove ourselves from the center of our view of the world and attempting to see the world from another person's point of view. This is particularly important in a time when I think many of us are becoming increasingly anxious or restless about our desire to get back to normal. A lot of states around the country, including our own, are starting to lift some restrictions that have been in place for a number of weeks. And it's natural to be excited about those restrictions being lifted and perhaps to go back to some practices and activities that we've been able to enjoy in the past. Where I think empathy can help as we look out at the world and we see things changing around us is empathy gives us the opportunity to see the world, as much as we're able at least, from another person's perspective. So you might, for example, think of people who live in those places where COVID-19 has been particularly devastating. The tri-state area of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, for example, or our neighboring state of Iowa, where cases in certain counties have really ramped up over the last couple of weeks. You may even think about areas of our own state, like Douglas County or Hall County or Dakota County, that have been seeing increasing numbers of cases over the last several weeks. If you think about what it's like to be in those places where people are scared and anxious because they feel more vulnerable to this illness than perhaps we do in our own small town in this corner of the state. If you think about what life may be like for people who have been impacted more heavily by this illness, it may serve to help give you a sense of perspective as you think about what life should look like in our particular area. I think that empathy should also spur us to want to look out for one another and to help one another through this crisis. It's not just about getting perspective so that we can decide what we're going to do. It's also a matter of understanding the needs of our neighbors and looking to find ways that we can meet those needs. In our particular area, those needs might be serving a neighbor who isn't able to get out or who doesn't feel comfortable getting out because they're concerned about exposure to the virus. It may be helping somebody who has some particular health difficulties, whose activities have been constrained. It might just be reaching out to people who feel isolated and making sure that they know that they're not alone in the midst of this. All of us are struggling in one way or another. I know this hasn't been easy for anybody. And for those people who are performing those essential jobs and are still going to their place of employment on a daily basis or several times a week, I imagine that it can be scary to go to those places and not know whether you're around someone who has been exposed and whether you may potentially pick it up and expose your own family. It's an anxiety-producing time. For those of us who don't carry those anxieties in the same way, I think empathy is one of the practices that will help us to see why there's so much concern for many of our neighbors and our friends, and to understand the need to be prudent and safe and cautious as we look to the next several days, and the next few weeks, and even the next several months as this continues to unfold. Empathy, the ability to feel what another feels, to identify with those feelings, and then to respond accordingly, is a great virtue for people in general, but it's particularly one that Jesus embodied in the same way that Jesus embodied the humility that we talked about last week. So I invite you over the rest of today and through the next several weeks to consider what it would be like to adopt an empathic viewpoint toward our community and our world. Practicing that empathy for others can help you to understand the fear and the anxiety that other people have, even if you don't share it. And I think it's a good way for us to remain connected with people across our community, across our state, throughout our nation, and around the world as this crisis continues to unfold. My prayer for you, as always, is that this reflection will be helpful for you. I hope you know that I continue to hold all of you in my prayers each day, and I look forward to the time when we'll be able to be together again, when it's safe for us to do so. Until we are together again, I invite you to receive this blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord's face shine on you with grace and mercy. The Lord look upon you with favor and give you his peace. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.